misty and murky night on Thursday night. Temperatures still around average for the time of year, but there could be quite a lot of drizzle, especially over any high ground by the time we get to Friday morning. The cloud will burn back across western areas in particular, so for much of Wales, the southwest and Northern Ireland too, we'll see a good amount of sunshine from the word go on Friday. And then as we head through to the weekend, many areas will see some sunshine through Saturday, with more rain arriving from the west on Sunday. I'll see you later.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, the Archbishop of Woke wades into the elected government's migrant policy and egregiously opposes the will of the British people.
I urge the government to reconsider much of the bill, which fails to live up to our history, our moral responsibility, and our political and international interests.
I'll explain while it's the meddling liberal elite like Justin Welby who are the reckless and inhumane ones in my digest next. They're my superstar panel weigh-in. Tonight, I'm joined by Dominique Samuels, Adam Brooks and Matthew Larser. Also on the way, as Prince Harry's ghostwriter speaks out about the pair's blazing rows, is Star Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vine right that the Duke has gone from, quote, adored younger son to a brittle has-been. Angela Levin gives her unflinching analysis shortly. Then Britain's favourite entertainer Jim Davidson delivers his hilarious verdict on the coronation, including Princess Anne's hilarious plume that hid the snarling Dukes from the world's eye. He's uncancelled later in the show. Plus, with the arrested anti-monarchy campaigner Graham Smith vowing to take legal action, were police wrong to detain some Republicans before the coronation? Leader of No More Royals, Riz Posnet, takes on Lady Victoria Harvey in what promises to be a very fiery clash soon. Elsewhere tonight, as it emerges, the National Crime Agency, dubbed Britain's FBI, has been drafted in to help police probe the SNP's finances. Are the scandal-ridden separatists finished as a political force? Will the Tory, who's aiming to capitalise on their collapse and save the Conservatives in Scotland, Megan Gallagher, she's the deputy leader of the party there, speaks out live. And as a shocking new film called, you're not going to believe this, Killing Boris Johnson, is selected by the Cannes Film Festival.
Into the garden for about 25 minutes.
Unbelievable. Have the hypocritical Be Kind lefties in the entertainment industry just hit a new low? Westminster's toughest talking MP, Lee Anderson, weighs in. Plus, is smug LBC shock job James O'Brien spreading fake news?
Well, I have to say, I'm a little bit disappointed in Keir Starmer not saying he's going to overturn this latest bit of legislation.
No, that's That's unfortunately a misapprehension. I think that was a consequence of David Lammy saying something on LBC over the weekend.
No, it wasn't. I'll reveal all of the media buzz. As ever, stay tuned for tomorrow's newspaper front pages hot off the press. A brand new Greatest Britain Union Jackass Crown 2. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. Good Wednesday evening to you. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel. My digest on why Justin Welby must not oppose the country's will on migrants in just a moment. First, though, the news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening. The top story on GB News tonight. Government plans to remove EU laws from the UK statute book by the end of this year have now been scrapped. Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch said only around 600 out of 4,800 laws would now be revoked under the retained EU law bill. That's due, she says, to the risks of legal uncertainty if they were automatically scrapped. Former Conservative Cabinet Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg accused Rishi Sunak today of shredding his own promises.
And his deeds are not matching. That is a dangerous position for a Prime Minister to be in. The 2019 manifesto that people like me got elected on is not being followed. Brexit, that was meant to be safeguarded by this, is now being blocked by Remainers in the House of Lords and weakness coming from ministries. This seems to me to be a real blow to Brexit, a problem for Brexit, not delivering on what we want and not giving us the fruits of deregulation that we voted for.
Well, also in the news today, the Archbishop of Canterbury has condemned the government's illegal migration bill in a rare intervention from the House of Lords. The controversial legislation aims to detain and promptly remove migrants who arrive in the UK in small boats. It also looks to limit the ability of the European Court of Human Rights to prevent the deportation of asylum seekers. Downing Street says the bill is compassionate and fair, but Justin Welby says it treats migrants as invaders. Now, the Royal College of Nursing in Wales has announced within the last hour or so that 4 days of strikes across the next 2 months after its members rejected a new NHS pay offer will go ahead. The industrial action is set to include the day shift on the 6th and 7th of June and the 12th and 13th of July. The union says the Welsh Government should act in the interests of patients and urgently re-enter negotiations. They say only a substantial offer will avoid a return to the picket lines. Interest rates are expected to rise again this week as inflation remains high, according to economists. Experts believe the base rate is going to go up by 0.25% to 4.5%. That would be the 12th consecutive raise by the central bank and mark the highest level since 2008. Any rise is expected to make loans and mortgage rates more expensive. And lastly, the publisher of the Mirror newspaper has unreservedly apologised to the Duke of Sussex for unlawful information gathering. At the start of a High Court trial over alleged phone hacking, Mirror Group newspapers admitted that Prince Harry's legal challenge warranted compensation. The tabloid also promised the behaviour would never be repeated. Other high-profile claimants involved in the trial include former Girls Aloud singer Cheryl, the estate of George Michael and the footballer Ian Wright. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It is the will of the overwhelming majority of the British people to stop the boats. The overwhelming majority know that a weak policy approach to the invasion of our southern border allows cruel people smuggling gangs to thrive and a humanitarian and economic crisis to cascade. For all of its faults, and there are many, this Conservative government knows that too and is trying to take action. So why is the Westminster establishment, woke blob and MSM, doing all they can to frustrate a policy that is the will of the people and the government? This is like Brexit all over again. The privileged in their ivory tower of the House of Lords trying to subvert democracy when they don't have to deal with any of the consequences, including, by the way, another 400 at least illegally streaming in over the Coronation bank holiday weekend. No one man represents this phenomenon better than the Archbishop of Canterbury, who has already slammed the illegal migration bill and the crucial Rwanda deterrent as cruel and ungodly. Well, today, he went even further.
This bill fails utterly to take a long-term and strategic view of the challenges of migration and undermines international cooperation, rather than taking an opportunity for the UK to show leadership, as we did in 1951. Even if this bill succeeded in temporarily stopping the boats, and I don't think it will, it won't stop conflict or climate migration. I urge the government to reconsider much of the bill, which fails to live up to our history, our moral responsibility, and our political and international interests.
Responding to the comments, the Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick slammed Welby as wrong in an interview with the BBC.
Bishop of Canterbury says it's isolationist, it's morally unacceptable, and he says it's politically impractical. How do you respond to that?
Well, he's wrong on both accounts. Firstly, there's nothing moral about allowing the pernicious trade of people smugglers to continue. I disagree with him respectfully. By bringing forward this proposal, we make it clear that if you come across illegally on a small boat, you will not find a route to life in the UK. You'll either be returned home if your home country is a safe place like Albania, or you'll be returned to a safe third country such as Rwanda. That will have a serious deterrent effect.
And the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, and Justice Secretary Alex Chalk also rightly warned peers not to defy the clear desire of the British people to control immigration by blocking the legislation. That's because the Lords is expected to try and water down government powers to ignore the ECHR and detain all illegal migrants. So Braverman and Chalk implored in The Times, "We urge the House of Lords to look at the illegal migration bill carefully. Remember, it is designed to meet the will of the British people in a humane and fair way, and back the bill." Now, let me be clear. Legal migration to the UK, legal migration, is soaring to record numbers never anticipated under Brexit that are certainly not the will of the people either. So the need to put a stop to illegal immigration is now an acute priority. The Tories have not done enough. You know I've criticised them for that these past 2 years, but at least they are trying. Just imagine the very realistic alternative, a Labour, Lib Dem, SNP, Corbynite, Green coalition from hell that will simply give up on border control altogether and throw open our doors to terrorists and criminals. It is the elite in this country, the liberal elite like Welby, who are the reckless, irresponsible and inhumane ones. To respond now, my superstar panel, the political commentator Dominique Samuels, the businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza. Adam, are you as annoyed about this intervention from Welby as I am?
Why is he there at the end of the day? Why is he there? He's an unelected archbishop in a room of unelected lords, and they're going to stop a bill that has the backing, you know, of the majority of this country, and has been put forward from elected officials. I think, you know, he needs to butt out and get back to sorting his own house in order. The church is in a mess. You know, they're at the lowest levels they've ever been. He needs to sort out his own problems. We've got to remember, these people that come over in the boats include, we've had terrorists, we've had rapists, drug dealers, gangsters. We don't know who any of these people are roaming our streets, and I've seen them in my local towns. This affects the average person in this country. It doesn't affect people like Welby. They have no idea, you know, what is going to happen in these communities. We have to put a stop to it. There's a reason these people come over illegally as well. They do not want their real names or their backgrounds checked. So there has to be a deterrent. And I think, you know, even the Archbishop of Rwanda is on board and says it's a right thing to do for asylum seekers to go there. Now, if the Archbishop of Rwanda backs it, why doesn't our Archbishop?
I mean, Dominique, the problem that I have with what Welby's saying is that actually what's inhumane is allowing a people smuggling trade to continue. And what else are we going to do to stop the boats? What's his solution to stop the boats? Because actually, if the boats keep streaming in, you are empowering the criminals.
Well, I think, firstly, I don't think we can pick and choose, you know, what systems we utilise. You know, he's a member of the House of Lords, therefore he has a right to have a view on legislation. That's been, the way it is for generations.
But it's wrong, isn't it? You thought it was wrong with Brexit, for example.
I mean, to be honest, my opinions on the migration bill itself are sort of changing. I'm not completely sure that it's going to work, and I don't think we can sit here and pretend that, you know, there's not a reason why it's controversial. It's controversial because, you know, it's never been done before. My issue is, yes, you know, we're completely right to want to stop people coming here illegally, but my problem is, you know, is it going to stop people coming here from Afghanistan, from Syria, from Eritrea, from Sudan, when, you know, geopolitically we have actually backed decisions in other countries to meddle in their political affairs? But it might,
given that they're already in France, though. Do you see what I mean? That's the bigger point. If all of a sudden you have... Because at the moment the choice is between France and the UK. They're already in a first world country. Now, with the Rwanda deterrent, actually they're facing a choice between risking your life on the Channel to end up in the UK, but possibly be sent to Rwanda, which is why I think...
But I'm not entirely sure that people that come from the countries that I've mentioned that do have high asylum acceptance rates in this country, I'm not sure that is going to stop them. And is it really an issue of the boats themselves, or is it an issue of the fact that, you know, we've got 166,000 applications that we've not processed? Are those applications going to be processed from Rwanda any faster? I'm not sure that they are.
Well, no, of course they're not. And, I mean, there's a huge issue, Matthew, in terms of the processing.
Absolutely.
Which is a completely different conversation. But the conversation here is whether the Archbishop of Canterbury should be using the House of Lords to preach against government policy that is backed by the overwhelming majority of the British public.
Well, I'd love an elected House of Lords. The Tories have had 13 years to sort it out, and they haven't done a single thing. So, you know, we have an unelected second chamber. We have a state church. We saw the Archbishop playing his role on Saturday. And so if he's there, he's allowed to speak out.
Of course he's allowed to speak out. But my question is it responsible what he is saying? Because what he's not doing is providing a solution. And I think where the left and where the liberal elite in this country really make a mistake is that they treat the concept of stopping the boats as inhumane. Well, I believe it is the most humane policy, because if you stop the boats, you smash the people smuggling.
Yeah, I think there's an issue here between... The Labour Party's absolutely clear that it wants to stop the boats and has a plan to stop the boats.
What's the plan?
Well, the plan is to increase the border force, to sort processing out and to do a proper deal with
There's
France.
no plan. Labour has no
It absolutely has a plan, and a plan that might work.
That's
Dan,
the Tories' plan.
More people came over the weekend.
That's the Tories' plan without Rwanda.
More people came over the weekend than there are places envisaged
I know
in
it's
Rwanda.
a national emergency. I've been saying this is a national emergency for the past 2 years. But I'm sorry, Labour does not have a plan.
Labour does have a plan. But on the Archbishop, I think you're right that sometimes the
Labour's
Liberal
plan
opinion...
has come on in and will process you a little bit faster.
No, it isn't. 98% of applications last year weren't processed. If you want people to leave the country, you have to process the applications. You need to process applications and send people back. The Tories are not doing that, and Labour will do that.
But Dan,
I'm not sure they
the
will.
government's got a nuclear option, hasn't it? That we can bypass the Lords, but that would take a year. I mean,
the problem is
dangerous.
there's a lot of nuclear options here because also, what we really need to be doing is leaving the ETHR. But look, Natalie Plaza, Adam Brooks, Dominique Samuels, my superstar panel, are with me all night, but also on the way. As a new film, I can't believe this, literally, called Killing Boris Johnson comes to the Cannes Film Festival as the UK entry, have liberal lovies just proved they're full of hate? Lee Anderson calls them out soon. But next, as the arrested anti-monarchy campaigner Graham Smith vows to take legal action against the Met, were police wrong to detain Republicans before the coronation? Leader of No More Royals, Riz Posnet, goes head-to-head with arch-royalist Lady Victoria Harvey in the clash, but I want your view on this one. It's controversial. Dan at gbnews.uk. Vote in our poll at GB News. The clash straight after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson and Angela Levin on the way, but first, the clash. Now, Republic leader Graham Smith has vowed to take legal action after he was arrested with 5 other anti-monarchy protesters at the King's coronation last weekend. However, Met boss Sir Mark Rowley said cops targeted a criminal network, including a plot where fake stewards planned to launch bottles of paint at the procession and had received intelligence that protesters planned to use rape alarms to spook horses. Now, many royalists were grateful for the police's no-nonsense approach to the protesters. Lady Victoria Harvey used this show to make a pre-coronation appeal to the cops to stop disruptors from ruining the big day. Watch.
If I was in charge of this coronation, I would arrest all the heads of all of those kind of people that would be protesting. I would put them all in jail, like pre-coronation, and then release them after.
Maybe the Met was listening to Lady V, because tonight we're asking, were police wrong to arrest some Republicans before the coronation? I really want to know what you think on this. It's a controversial one. Dan at gbnews.uk. Vote in our poll at GB News. But to battle it out tonight, I'm joined live in the studio by the aforementioned Lady Victoria and the No More Royals campaigner, Riz Posnet. So, Riz, look, the issue is I completely believe in the right to protest. And on Saturday at the coronation, you were allowed to protest. I believe you were leading the local protest in Oxford. There was absolutely no issue with that. What you've seen lately is with a lot of these extreme groups like Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion, they're not protesting. They like to say they're protesting, but what they're actually doing is committing crimes, causing criminal damage, and being eco-terrorists. So can you understand why the police had to make a move on some of these folk?
So, to be absolutely clear, we're never going to agree on whether protest and illegal protest, which has an extensive history in the UK, should be allowed or not, should be criminalised or not. But that's besides the point here. This protest was liaised with the Met Police 4 months in advance, if I'm correctly informed. The Met Police were exactly aware of what protesters wanted to do, where they would be, exactly what would be happening on the day, and agreed to it. Now, they chose to arrest these 6 protesters and a number of other protesters on the day.
Who had rape alarms
because it became a national security issue.
So
that was the problem.
Totally, I appreciate you raising that, because that's a really misleading piece of information that has been shared by a number of news platforms.
You know, you can protest every day of the year.
So the reality is, yes, they arrested a number of night safety officers who work with Westminster City Council to protect vulnerable women in the streets, who had rape alarms to hand out to women. Now,
but if those rape alarms had been used during the day to scare the horses, and also, do these people have a right, Lady V, for example, to chuck paint over the carriage carrying the king?
These are complete hooligans that should be locked up, and I completely meant everything that I said, and I'm so happy that...
Because there was a lot of pushback from what you said, wasn't there, last week?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I've had people in the street coming up to me going, well done. We love what
because you're speaking for the majority.
Yeah, like you are a very small number.
Misleading.
No, but
the reality is this is an accurate reflection of the shocking state of democracy in Britain. Now, the laws that were used to arrest these people were pushed through last week. They've been described by the UN as deeply concerning.
But it was a security issue.
Let me just... there was no lawful basis for these arrests and no disruption clause. Now, I would...
Well, no, I wasn't, because you guys were not successful.
Well, I really look forward to the inquiry that will be made and the legal case against the Met Police that I expect those arrested will take. Because the reality is there was no disruption planned. It's absolutely untrue that the Met Police could possibly have any intelligence that would indicate
no disruption. So why are you protesting if you're not disrupting anything?
That's actually a really good point, right?
Because you're not doing anything. No one cares. No one cares about you guys. You guys are just like...
You've raised two really important points there.
They don't care about you.
First of all, we got a poll last week, or maybe the week before, from ITV saying 51% of British people support the monarchy. That's massively down. The reality is people do care.
No.
People dislike the monarchy. And,
they don't. Just it's your age group. It's this woke age group.
Lady Victoria.
Are you a boy or a girl? Because I'm confused right now.
But that's genuinely absurd.
No,
We're having like a legitimate,
but I'm just
or I would
like,
hope legitimate
but if
debate
you
around
can't
this issue.
decide what gender or sex,
we should stick to the topic. We should stick to the topic because we're here. No, but Lady V, we're here to talk about the monarchy. We're not here to talk about the gender debate.
What they are in themselves. How can they decide what we want? We want a monarchy.
But Lady V, you actually have a very strong feeling shared by Lee Anderson, the Deputy Tory Party Chairman, who we have coming up next. You believe that Republicans, if they don't like it, should just leave the country.
Yeah, just go somewhere else.
I really agree.
You're educated. You're obviously smart. You've had a really good upbringing. You've got.
She's at Oxford University.
Right. You're at the best, and so you're trying to pretend like you're not. You're trying to pretend you're something that you're not.
So I think that's a really interesting point to raise. You've talked about how Lady Victoria has extensively defended the monarchy.
Yeah, but you said on an interview, because I watched one of your other interviews, and you said you like the pomp and the pageantry.
Lady Victoria...
You did. You said that on an interview
grew up
that I watched.
in Ickworth House, that's correct, right?
When I was a baby.
Yeah, exactly. So I... before your parents went to Monaco to avoid paying
taxes. Well, you're privileged. You're at Oxford University.
Hang on, I just like to finish this point.
Okay, just let Riz make the point, Lady V.
Yeah. So you grew up in Ickworth House. I remember... I'm from Suffolk. I remember going there as a kid.
Okay, right.
And it's now National Trust, right? It's a public park. I think that's wonderful. The reality is Lady Victoria is obviously going to defend the monarchy because she profits from it. She wouldn't be here
How do I profit from it?
Shut up. She wouldn't be in this position. I'm not here to change her mind. I'm not here to change your mind,
but you're
I know
not
your stance on the monarchy. The reality is British people are shifting towards not supporting the monarchy. We're seeing the way these polls are going.
It's just her age.
It's the popular opinion these days.
OK, let Lady V come in.
I just want to say that I think it is more your age group that is this. It's like trying to be very destructive, causing chaos. But the older generations don't care about you guys. They just look at you like, what are these idiots doing? And that's it.
Do you think this generation will grow up and actually start to realise that there is no better alternative to our monarchy?
Yeah, well, look, OK, as an example, the Coronation brought in £1.36 billion.
So that's completely
untrue. And it only
untrue.
costs
that's
150 million maximum. No, this country is...
But Riz, you must accept, though, you must accept that the monarchy...
You
must accept that having a living monarchy...
Who would be president?
That is adored worldwide, sparks huge tourism to this country, and it easily
That's a really interesting point.
You say that to everything. That's an interesting point. You just repeat yourself.
Shut up. Let me answer the question.
Who do you think should be the president?
No one cares. Let me answer the question.
Who should be president?
Okay. I'm not the British public. I'm not going to pick a person.
No, you are. You're trying to say you are.
Be quiet. Let me answer the question.
No.
You asked, what was it? Popular monarch. Completely untrue, right? Charles is not popular. We've seen scandal after scandal.
But I was actually talking about the economic side of things.
Oh, OK, brilliant. Yeah, I'm really happy
and the fact that actually the monarchy pays for itself
I'm really happy to talk about that. So the reality is there's the sovereign grant, which is paid for by the estates. In my view, that should be held by the British people regardless. But that's besides the point, because the sovereign grant is, what, £25 million? The reality is it's more like £345 million a year that they cost us. That's in terms of the money spent by local councils who are massively underfunded. And police operations like this one, which was the
what would you do? Are you one of these folk who says, you know, King Charles should go and pitch up in a council house? Is that where
you don't sound like she lives in a
genuinely...
She doesn't sound like she lives in
Have you got, like, a genuine, legitimate argument to make, or are you just going to pick on me because you haven't got anything better to say?
I'm picking on you because you're shouting at me, you know?
You're literally yapping over every point I make. Now, I'm not interested in Charles as an individual. I'm interested in, like, the state of democracy in Britain. I genuinely don't care what happens to him. Okay. But I'm pretty sure that he's got enough money to sort himself out. The reality is...
We're in just now. I'm going to do a Piers Morgan on you because you don't shut up. So who would you have as president if we did not have a royal family?
So you've asked this question before.
And you're not responding.
Piers asked it too.
I know, and you didn't respond to Piers either.
Because I'm not the British public. I'm not going to propose who should be
your ideal world is an elected head of state.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
And that's worked really well for France.
Do you like the idea of...
Shut up! Like, genuinely, would you let him ask me a question?
He's asking
I'm actually loving this. I can just sit back and watch you two go at each other.
Do you want
That's
a
my
minute
dream.
to say whatever you want to say? I can come back to it after.
I haven't been able to speak.
Oh, please.
So do you think it has worked out very well for France right now, looking at the chaos in France? Do you think it's a good thing that
Can I respond to that question?
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. France is a republic, and the protests in France are genuinely nothing to do with that.
Why don't you move there?
Because I believe in British democracy. I genuinely, despite the politics here and despite how we treat people here, I believe in the future of democracy in modern Britain.
OK.
And
well, look,
can I say this one last point?
Yes, final point.
Many people have said this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. The reality is, this guy's old. Charles is on his way out.
Well, you're young.
I hope not.
You're young, so you'll probably see the next coronation.
I hope that this is the last coronation in Britain. I truly
hope.
Well,
it's not. I think, Riz, you're going to be very disappointed.
Yeah.
I think you're going to be very disappointed. But obviously,
else.
we hope King William won't be on the throne for a few more years yet.
Right.
That was Lady Victoria Harvey and the No More Royals member, Riz Posner. So who do you agree with on this? Were the police wrong to arrest some Republicans before the coronation? Lily on Twitter writes, yes, as I believe in the right to protest peacefully. What I would like to see, however, is this kind of force applied to eco-terrorists such as Just Stop Oil, who seem to be allowed to get away with anything. I agree with that. From Jackie, the police in our country are damned if they don't and damned if they do. Honestly, the police need to keep doing the job they are paid for. Sometimes it's not what the public want, but surely public safety is important. And from Steve, there is a time and place to protest, and the King's coronation was not one of them. It was the biggest event in 70 years, and the world was watching. The Met got it right for once. And your verdict is now in. 30% of you believe that it was wrong to arrest some Republicans before the coronation. 70% of you with Lady Victoria Harvey saying it was entirely right. Now, coming up, as Harry's ghostwriter speaks out about rows with the bitter Duke of Delusion, is columnist Sarah Vine right that he's gone from adored younger son to a brittle has-been? Well, Harry's biographer Angela Levin joins me soon. But next, as a sick new film brazenly titled Killing Boris Johnson is the only British selection at the famous Cannes Film Festival, have the Be Kind left just exposed their rank hypocrisy? Westminster's toughest talking MP, the Tory Deputy Chairman Lee Anderson, he's going to hit out at these Liberal lovies straight after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Time now for Westminster's toughest talking MP, Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party, Lee Anderson. And in yet another example of the Be Kind Left's stunning hypocrisy, a new British film centred around a plot to murder Boris Johnson has been selected for screening at the Cannes Film Festival. Now, it's called Killing Boris Johnson, and it's the only British entry where student director Musa Alderson-Clarke said he wanted the film to, quote, immortalise the feeling that myself and so many others experienced during the pandemic. Watch.
My memory of this event, as I've said, is going out into the garden for about 25 minutes. I just repeat, I'm deeply sorry for this. This was something that was against the rules. It was a breach of the
This absolutely despicable film, backed by the National Film and Television School, no less, was the only British entry selected for the student short film category at Cannes. So, Lee Anderson, apparently it's now also going to be eligible for an Oscar. Does this just show that the Be Kind left and the entertainment industry has hit a new low when it comes to their coverage of Conservative politics?
It has. It's shocking. The clue's in the title. We just saw that then. Some deranged lunatic loading up a shotgun. There's a picture, supposedly of Boris there. This is a new level, Dan, that people have sunk to in this country. Like you say, it's the Be Kind left. It's the tolerant ones. It's the kind of gentler politics. Some left-wing lunatics have obviously got their heads together to produce this sort of film. Shock! I can't believe I'm seeing it, actually. I mean, I saw it for the first time today. I read a little bit about it. I thought, this has got to be parody, surely. It's got to be nonsense. But actually, it's at a film festival. It could go to the Oscars. What are we playing at in this country? Absolutely shocking.
It is the only British entry at Cannes.
If that's the best we've got for our filmmakers, then we've got problems in this country. I'm sure it's not, by the way, but it just shows, it shows the direction that some people in this country are going to. To have a title like that is absolutely abhorrent.
And it would never be acceptable, and it shouldn't be acceptable, by the way, if it was the reverse. I mean, if there was a film made called Killing Angela Rayner, it would be leading every news bulletin in this country, and it would be completely unacceptable. But what about the hypocrisy? And I want to actually ask you about this shocking moment we saw over the weekend. I mean, what an amazing weekend it was, Lee, but unfortunately, there were parts of our media that seemed so desperate to bring down unity in Britain. And there was this moment on ITV when the British actress described the Buckingham Palace balcony scene where the royal family stepped out as being terribly white. And to me, that also felt like a huge moment of hypocrisy.
Well, shock and horror, Dan. The royal family are white. They, they marry white people, normally. They have white children. Then they all go on the balcony at a special event like this. Hey, presto, they're all white. What do they really expect? It's terribly nonsense. It's divisive, it's nasty, it's horrible. I've made some comments over the weekend as well. I said, I mentioned the protesters, which I think I'll come on to later. Look, this was a special occasion. It was a lovely occasion. It's one of those occasions where the whole country unites and gets behind the royal family, get behind each other. We're all nice to each other for a weekend, and you get some idiot come on the TV and try and spoil it all. They just shut up.
Indeed.
Indeed. And of course, there's been, I think, 4,500 complaints to Ofcom today. So the bloke on the BBC who said, oh, you haven't upset anyone, well, he's proven to be completely untrue. We did actually just have a very fiery clash, Lee, between one of the Republican protesters and Lady Victoria Harvey. Now, Lady V is with you. She just says the Republicans, if they don't like it, should leave the country. Do you stand by those comments?
Well, I made some comments last week, as you know, Dan, got me in hot water. And my comment is quite simple. If you don't like our British way of life, our culture, our history, our royal family, then what the hell are you doing here? You know, you've got a free choice. You can go and live elsewhere. I'm proud to be British. I'm proud to have a royal family. I'm proud to live in this brilliant country of ours. This country, as I said before on this show, is a gift to the world. We're lucky to live in this country. You know that, Dan. And if you don't like it, then, you know what, get on a dinghy and go to France.
There's been some suggestion, Lee, that it was maybe your confrontation with the Met Police Chief, Mark Rowley, which actually sparked a bit of a tougher approach. Let's just have a look at what went down in case folk missed it.
I think it's time that you left the ivory tower and got out there on Whitehall and sorted these people out. You say you took 5 years out of the force. There's probably people listening to this today wish it was a lot longer, and I'm one of them.
I'm not going to sit here when if people want to be personally offensive, then write it in newspapers, but I'm not going to answer those questions.
Shots fired, Lee Anderson. OK, so first you've got to tell me, what's the beef? What's the background there?
Well, I mean, he was personally offensive to me. He sat in that select committee. In my opinion, he treated us like idiots. And the big beef I've got, Dan, is we see these protesters on an almost weekly basis now on Whitehall around London, causing disruption and mayhem, stopping ambulances, stopping buses, stopping taxi drivers, stopping us getting to work. And he sat there in his ivory tower doing nothing about it. So I collared him. It was my chance to have a go at him, and a real go at him because he deserved it. Hey, presto, 24 hours later, there was on Whitehall, the police were dragging these protesters off and putting them on the pavement. He was saying they hadn't got the laws to do this. They have got the laws to do this, and they're doing it right now. So what he was saying in the Select Committee meeting was not true. I'm glad I had the chance to challenge him and stand up for the people of this great city of ours, and they're doing it now. So, yeah, I'm not going to take all the credit for it, but he needed telling.
The thing that annoys me, Lee, is that, look, they did it for the coronation.
Yeah.
But why are they not doing it when you have these eco-terrorists standing in the middle of the M25 or stopping poor kids getting to school?
Yep.
That's where they need to be dragged off the street.
It is. Hopefully now, Dan, this will set a precedent. You know, Mark Rowley's actually doing the job he's paid to do, which is instructing his police officers to keep our streets safe. They've done it over the past week or so now since we had that confrontation. I think the coronations fell at a decent time to reinforce what he's doing. And hopefully other police forces around the country look at this now and think, you know what, let's stop painting bloody rainbows on cars and dancing the Macarena. Let's do his job, which is keeping the British public safe.
Obviously, you've got the free speech advocates, which I am a part of, who say you should be able to protest. But isn't the point... These were not protests. I mean, they were caught with rape alarms which were going to be used to scare the horses. There were plans to cover the state coach in paint during the middle of the procession. And this is what's annoying me about this. That is not protest, is it? That is criminal damage. There are two different things going on here. People can protest all they want as long as they do it peacefully.
It is, Dan. It's criminal damage. And I'll tell you what, some of these people that we see on these protests on an almost weekly basis now, I think the professional protesters are fairly sure they've got 100 different placards at home for a different protest each week, and they just turn up each week and protest on a different subject. They're anarchists, exactly.
And they need to get a haircut, get a real job. Probably most of them are on benefits, being paid for by us.
Too judgmental.
Now, look, I've got to talk about this UK Eurovision entry, right, May Muller, because I'm a big fan of Eurovision usually. I'm really struggling to get behind this woman, Lee, because of the despicable comments that she has made about our country, about Boris Johnson, who she said should be left to die when he had COVID-19. And now, apparently, despite representing UK in Eurovision, she's actually applied for a German passport.
Well, good luck to her. I mean, I hope she gets it. If she becomes a German citizen, she might actually have a chance of winning the Eurovision Song Contest then, because we never seem to win it, do we? I mean, it's absolutely disgraceful. This is a lady that says she's ashamed to be British, hates this country.
She calls you a racist elite, which is quite funny.
Happy to take some of that and the fame and fortune to sing songs on behalf of this great country of ours. If she's ashamed, then good luck to her. Get your German passport. clear off to Germany, don't come back.
I wasn't
That's me.
surprised to hear Keir Starmer in PMQs today say that she's one of his constituents, because this is how they all think.
Yeah, it is.
In North London.
Again, it's the Metropolitan Elite. They, like I said before, Dan, on the show, they're ashamed of our country, our history, our culture, everything we stand for. He thinks that's funny. I don't think it's funny. And I tell you what, the vast majority of this country don't think it's funny.
No, indeed. Well, I'm actually not going to be watching on Saturday night because I'm
I'll tell you what,
Conservative Democratic organisation.
If anybody's watching this now, follows me on Twitter or on Facebook, and they're watching the Eurovision Song Contest, please unfollow me.
OK, yeah, you're going to be watching GB News, right? GB News. Lee Anderson, Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, thank you so much. But coming up, as Rishi Sunak vows to resist woke issues like gender extremism and warped sex education in schools, while slippery Starmer says that irrelevant, will opposing the left's toxic ideologies help the Tories defeat Labour at the next election? My Superstar panel return to debate that soon. But next, as Prince Harry's ghostwriter speaks out about the rows with the angry Duke of Delusion, is columnist Sarah Vine right that he's gone from adored younger son to a brittle has-been? Well, Harry's biographer Angela Levin gives her take in just a couple of minutes' time.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it? With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Now, the Duke of Delusion, Prince Harry, faced an unsurprisingly awkward weekend as he briefly skulked back to Britain for his father's coronation. But this week doesn't look to be getting much easier for Haughty Has, as the renowned ghostwriter J.A. Moiringer revealed that he found his experience writing Harry's mucky memoir, Spare, exasperating, as he remembered one particularly fiery exchange. So he said, although this wasn't the first time that Harry and I had argued, it felt different. It felt as if we were hurtling towards some kind of decisive rupture, in part because Harry was no longer saying anything. He was just glaring into the camera. With even his stateside allies like Mo Ringer turning on him, the Mail's Sarah Vine seems in no mood to give the disruptive Duke a break. She observes that Harry's very public split with the royal family has taken away the one reason America cared about him in the first place, concluding in just a few short years he has gone from being the adored younger son to a bitter and brittle has-been. Harsh, perhaps, but maybe true. So, to analyse, I'm delighted to be joined live in the studio by the royal author. She was Prince Harry's biographer, spent a lot of time with him, Angela Levin. So, Angela, look, firstly, these revelations from the ghostwriter were very fascinating to me because by the end of the piece he's saying, oh, Harry and Meghan are lovely and they looked after me, and I'm sure he's very happy with the millions and millions made.
She gave him sweets.
Yes, she bought him
Big
sweets.
deal. Yes.
But it's very clear that working with Harry is really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
He's troubled.
Yes, I think, you know, he's got to a terrible down stage where the only way he can actually feel he's powerful is to shout and scream at people. And I think that's because he's very unhappy. I mean, he's got every opportunity to cut off everything, draw a line, a big line, and move on, but he won't. He wants to sit there and get very, very determined that he's going to get his way, even if he's asked an expert to give him advice. He won't take any advice from anyone except Meghan. Then he does absolutely what she tells him to do.
Yes, because what it seemed to me is like this ghostwriter was trying to save him from himself. He was trying to exclude certain parts of the book that were inappropriate. But I'm thinking, my goodness, what did he leave out? Because there was so much inappropriate stuff left in this book.
Yes, well, I think probably they had arguments about that. He said that there were lots of other arguments. I think we didn't need to know about his private parts. No. We didn't need to know that William was circumcised, especially when he called him Willie. I thought that was absolutely disgusting. It should have all come out. And if he'd just gone through how he hasn't found himself yet or something like that in the book and the things that happened, fine, but not to use it to absolutely swipe his family. And I thought, you know, he looked very lonely and tense when he walked in through the cathedral when all his cousins have got their partners. And I thought that, you know, come on now, he's married. He's married to a woman who's supposed to love him. Why isn't she there helping him? And why doesn't she say to him, listen to this man because he's an expert. He's won awards. He knows what he's talking about. But she doesn't. She doesn't seem to want to be there when she's needed because she's busy going out for a walk or something like that, you know. And I think he doesn't know how to handle it. I think he's pulled in two directions. The few parts of him that actually like what happened in his youth and how the monarchy exists. And the other is that he's absolutely obsessed with Meghan and he has to obey her and keep her happy, which he can't do because she's one of those women that nothing's ever enough.
And then, when he's dealing with 4 court cases, imagine the pressure that piles on. And we're going to be talking later in the show about the details of the Mirror case which came to court today.
Yeah.
But you know the man, Angela. You know his psyche. Why is he so obsessed with being involved in court case after court case? Because, look, having been involved with those sorts of high-profile court cases myself, not out of choice, they take a huge emotional toll. Yet he wants to be involved in as many as possible.
Because he wants power, anything that gives him power. Who listens to him now? We saw when the service was going on, nobody cared 2 hoots about him. There weren't boos, there weren't claps. You know, he's irrelevant. And to make himself unirrelevant, if that's a word, that he wants to keep going and win.
And let's just be very clear about what he's trying to do. He's trying to shut down people like you. He's trying to shut down people like me who honestly commentate and report on his life, which is actually something that journalists should be able to do.
Well, I liked him a lot when I wrote the book. I wasn't unkind at all. But I
You've
think
reacted based on his behaviour.
Yeah, and I spent a lot of time with him. We went to engagements and all that, so we had long conversations in the palace, and I built up a picture. It's a sort of verbal picture, isn't it? And I think that that's not the point with him now. The point is to slice everybody, to try and give himself a position. Of course, he hasn't got it. I spent a while looking up what he does now in the day and who his friends are. Well, you know, he doesn't seem to have friends. Meghan's got the friends. And what he's doing is self-care. He spends a lot of time doing that.
It's Meghan's world.
Yeah.
He just lives in it.
Well, he doesn't live, he has to endure it, actually, I think.
What do you make of Sarah Vine's point in the Daily Mail today that Harry now feels like a brittle has-been?
Well, he is a brittle has-been, no doubt about it.
So you agree with her?
Well, I do agree with her, because what is he giving to the country? Nothing. What is he giving in America? All he's doing is moaning and whining. How is he behaving as the son of the king? He is trying to attack him, he's trying to bring him down. He didn't look at him when he came in. He didn't have time to go and say, you know, well done, Dad, and well done, William. You know, and if you don't give anything, but you want it all back to you, you're out in the cold. And the whole nonsense of going back, rushing back to be with Archie for his birthday, you got there at 8:30 at night. No 4-year-old has a birthday at 8:30 at night. But we saw Meghan walk, who said she had to say there to be authentic, one of her favourite words, and that she would, you know, wanted to be with him all day, but she was out walking with friends. So that's a hypocritical thing to say. And he can't understand that what's going on. It's all a mess.
Exactly.
It's all a terrible mess.
But as you say, Angela Levin, he has to obey her. You know, and there you go. But look, so great to speak. Angela Levin, Harry's biographer, of course, also the biographer of Camilla, and we will speak next week.
Thank you.
But coming up, as the police bring in the National Crime Agency over the SNP's finances probe, is the jig up for Sturgeon and her cabal of separatists? Deputy leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Megan Gallagher, I think she's their big hope. North of the border, she's going to join me soon. But next, as Rishi Sunak vows to resist woke issues while Slippery Starmer says they're irrelevant, will opposing the left's toxic ideology help the Tories win the next election? My superstar panel debate that in just a moment.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, The People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it. Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, Prince Harry might be back in Montecito, but his battle with the British press rages on. That's as the publisher of the Mirror newspaper group admits there is some evidence of unlawful information gathering. But is it healthy for the Duke of Sussex to continue waging war with the UK media despite claiming to want to start a peaceful new life in California while the rest of the royal family settle out of court? I'll be posing that question to my superstar panel shortly, and tonight I'm joined by Dominic Samuels, Adam Brooks and Matthew Larza. Then I'll ask comedy legend Jim Davidson what he thought of Harry's one-man show at the Coronation, including Princess Anne's convenient headwear that kept the disgraced Duke well out of sight. And we'll get his take on the Bud Bear boycott when Jim Davidson returns in uncancelled. Cannot wait. Who knows what's going to happen later this hour. Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer have gone head-to-head on the culture wars, with the Labour leader telling his shadow cabinet it's not important whether he can answer basic questions like this.
Keir had said 99.9% of women don't have penises.
Almost nobody, but nobody, is talking about trans issues.
So, is the Prime Minister right to stand up to trans extremism and the Britain-hating Liberal elite? And could tackling woke ideology be a silver bullet for the Tories at the ballot box? That's our big debate next. Plus, as it emerges, the National Crime Agency, which has been dubbed Britain's FBI, has been called into the SNP finances investigation. Are the scandal-ridden separatists about to lose their stranglehold in Holyrood? The Tory who could save the Conservatives in Scotland, Megan Gallagher, who broke her maternity leave to vote against scheming Sturgeon's sick gender reform bill, she's going to speak out live. And finally, has LBC's most sanctimonious presenter been caught spreading fake news?
So I have to say, I'm a little bit disappointed in Keir Starmer not saying he's going to overturn this latest bit of legislation.
No, that's unfortunately a misapprehension.
Just because the police have got a power, it doesn't mean they have to use it.
Don't miss that hysterical Life of O'Brien moment coming up. In the media buzz, there'll also be a new Greatest Britain and Union jackass before the night is out. First front pages too hot off the press. I'm going to show you them in mere minutes, straight after the news headlines with Polly Millhurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening. The top story at 10 o'clock. Government plans to remove EU laws from the UK statute book by the end of this year have now been scrapped. Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch said only around 600 out of 4,800 laws would now be revoked under the retained EU law bill. It's due, she says, to risks of legal uncertainty if they were automatically scrapped. Former Conservative Cabinet Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg accused Rishi Sunak of shredding his own promises.
And his deeds are not matching. That is a dangerous position for a Prime Minister to be in. The 2019 manifesto that people like me got elected on is not being followed. Brexit, that was meant to be safeguarded by this, is now being blocked by Remainers in the House of Lords and weakness coming from ministries. This seems to me to be a real blow to Brexit, a problem for Brexit, not delivering on what we want and not giving us the fruits of deregulation that we voted for.
Meanwhile, the Archbishop of Canterbury has today condemned the government's illegal migration bill in a rare intervention from the House of Lords. The controversial legislation aims to detain and promptly remove migrants who arrive in the UK in small boats. It also looks to limit the ability of the European Court of Human Rights to prevent the deportation of asylum seekers. Downing Street says the bill is compassionate and fair, but Justin Welby said it treats migrants as invaders. Now, the Royal College of Nursing in Wales has announced 4 days of strikes across the next 2 months after its members rejected a new NHS pay offer. The industrial action is set to include the 6th and 7th of June and the 12th and 13th of July. The union says the Welsh Government needs to act in the interests of patients and urgently re-enter negotiations. They say only a substantial offer will avoid a return to the picket lines. Interest rates are expected to rise again this week as inflation remains high, according to economists. Experts believe the base rate is going to go up by 0.25% to 4.5%. That would be the 12th consecutive raise by the central bank and mark the highest level since 2008. Any rise is expected to make loans and mortgage rates more expensive. And lastly, the publisher of the Mirror newspaper has unreservedly apologised to the Duke of Sussex for unlawful information gathering. At the start of a High Court trial today over alleged phone hacking, Mirror Group newspapers admitted that Prince Harry's legal challenge warranted compensation. The tabloid also promised that behaviour would never be repeated. Other high-profile claimants involved in the trial include former Girls Aloud singer Cheryl, the estate of George Michael, and the footballer Ian Wright. That's all from me. I'm back in an hour. Now, back over to Dan.
Tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. The first front pages are in. And the Metro leads on the clash between the Archbishop of Woke, Justin Welby, and Rishi Sunak, with the former calling the PM's migration bill morally unacceptable. The Independent leads on Prince Harry's legal case with the publisher of the Daily Mirror, who has apologised today for setting a private investigator on the Duke on one occasion 19 years ago. The Guardian leads with Justin Welby's attack on the migration bill. And my superstar panel. Back with me now, political commentator Dominique Samuels, the businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza. Now, in a post-local election rallying cry, Labour leader Keir Starmer has bizarrely claimed voters no longer care about the culture wars. But the truth is, Sir Flip-Flop has failed so spectacularly on anything from the trans debate to wokery in our institutions that distancing himself from those issues is nothing less than a cop-out. He might want us to forget it, but Slippery Starmer has consistently been on the wrong side of history when it comes to the wokery infesting our nation.
Keir had said 99.9% of women don't have penises. That means 1 in 1,000 do?
Well, Nick, what I'd say is I'm trying to set out a common sense, respectable, tolerant position in which we can advance a key debate. Almost nobody is talking about trans issues.
And we're committed to updating the GRA to introduce self-declaration for trans people.
And who can forget his infamous taking of the knee in tribute to the corrupt and divisive BLM movement in 2020. I believe Starmer's gravely underestimated the mood of the nation, not least because Rishi Sunak is actually doubling down on his intent to rid Britain of the woke mind virus, especially in schools. Speaking to the Daily Mail exclusively today, the PM said when it comes to the issue of women's rights, making sure that we protect women's safety and women's rights is important. Also, as I've talked about in the past, making sure that what our children are exposed to at schools is appropriate for them. I'm a parent, and I think most parents would care about that. So, Adam, as a parent yourself, do you think opposing the left's toxic ideologies will help the Tories defeat Labour at the next election?
Look, I'll give Rishi credit here. The words that he's saying are spot on. We have to push back, even fight back against this woke ideology. You know, I'm very vocal on Twitter about, you know, this self-identifying danger that's out there. I get hundreds of messages from women on DMs and ats thanking me for bringing this up about toilets and safe spaces. It's a massive worry. You've got to remember 51% of the population are female. As a father, you know, some of the things I've seen being taught in schools, you know, I wouldn't want my kids to hear that at the ages that they're being taught. I think it's wrong, and I think there needs to be investigations into schools and universities and what is being taught. I think it will help the Tories, but what they've done today with the EU laws is probably going to counterbalance any sort of poll gain here. So,
Matthew Lusby, you say this is just the Tory party being totally desperate to try and distract from real problems. But I would put it to you, there are real problems, right? There are really real problems. But it's also a real problem to have a future Prime Minister that thinks a woman can have a penis.
I mean, Dan, these are desperate tactics. We saw in council after council across the country last week, voters returning to the Labour Party, putting their trust in the Labour Party because they know the Labour Party is on their side across a whole range of issues. And so after having had that whopping defeat last Thursday at the ballot box, all the Rishi can talk about is the culture wars again today.
But local issues
it's a total distraction.
Local elections had nothing to do with.
If only local elections were fought on local issues. This was a national referendum on the Tories, and the Tories lost.
I disagree.
I think that, I don't believe either the Tories or Labour are a solution to our problems. I think what annoys me is when these issues, the term woke, I'm getting a bit sick of it, because really this,
Absolutely.
This is an issue of whether or not, we're recognising reality here, and the reality is, yes, a woman does not have a penis. Certain things being taught in schools about gender and sexuality are obviously wrong. But I think what some people fail to recognise is these issues have all flourished under a decade of a Conservative government. So I think that, you have to wake up and realise it is possible that they are using these issues to score cheap points with the public. Looking at voting intention, according to Statista, I think about 26% of people are intending to vote Conservative at the next election, 43% Labour. And the three main issues are the economy, health and immigration. So where I get a bit annoyed is, well, you're talking about these issues now, but this so-called woke ideology has flourished under your government.
No, and look, don't get me wrong, there are massive areas where the Conservative government, and there have been various governments, have dropped the ball. I would say, though, especially when it comes to women's rights, Dominique, that isn't one of those areas because, for example, Dominic Raab, as Justice Secretary, very quickly realised it would be inappropriate to house prisoners with male genitalia in female prisons. In Scotland, where you have a woke government under Nicola Sturgeon, you saw what happened. So I'm not saying they've been perfect, but I think especially when it comes to the protection of women's rights, you've got a real difference. It is one of the only points of difference at the moment between the Conservative and Labour Party, because I agree, I think the parties are way too close together and we don't have enough genuine choice.
I think it's important not to trivialise it, because obviously people have seen, politicians have seen that they can score cheap points on either side by making a big issue about, whether or not a trans person can self-ID, despite the fact that, it'll be biological women that are at risk to biological men and not necessarily trans people. And I think just on either side of the debate, it's gotten to a point where it's just completely ridiculous. And I suppose that is why it's such a hot topic, because, a vocal minority are pushing certain agendas and trying to shut down other people speaking out against them.
Final word, Adam.
Look, the Scottish case with the trans rapist highlighted to tens of millions of people in this country how dangerous and how stupid and ridiculous this is becoming.
And women's sport is another issue too. Now, as a fully paid-up member of the sneering Liberal elite, there's nothing James can do no wrong O'Brien hates more than fake news. So when a comrade phoned up his radio show yesterday complaining that Keir Starmer isn't repealing the government's Public Order Act, which will stop eco-terrorists and those committing criminal damage, O'Brien, he was quick to set the record straight.
So I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed in Keir Starmer not saying he's going to overturn this latest bit of legislation.
No, that's unfortunately a misapprehension. I think that was a consequence of David Lammy saying something on LBC over the weekend. Yes. So David Lammy says something off the cuff and out of context on LBC, and one of these weirdos clips it up and puts it out as proof that the Labour Party isn't going to be repealing any of this. But hey-ho, it's up to us to get the truth out there.
Thank goodness. Oh, well, thank goodness Lord Justice James got the truth out there. And before more conspiracies were allowed to spread, only a few hours later, Slippery Starmer substantiated O'Brien's comments, I assume.
We need to let it bed in. We need to look at how it operates in practice. Very often with public order legislation, as you know, there's a period of bedding in. Just because the police have got a power, it doesn't mean they have to use it in every situation.
Oh. So there you have it. Don't trust fake news, James O'Brien. Matthew Lazar, Adam Brooks, Dominic Samuels, do stand by, because coming up, as his battle with the British press rages on, is it healthy for the Duke of Sussex to continue waging war over here, despite claiming to want to start a peaceful new life in California? My superstar panel will be back to debate that very soon. But next, in a fascinating new development to the SNP finance probe, Scottish police have called in the National Crime Agency, otherwise known as Britain's FBI. So are the scandal-ridden separatists vulnerable at the next general election? Rising political star, the deputy leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Megan Gallagher, joins me in just a moment.
Here's what you might have missed on GB News Radio.
Talk about Hugo Bernan, because he is the only portrait photographer with a royal warrant given by the king. He previously worked for...
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's.
Welcome back. Stand by for Jim Davidson. But as the Scottish police probe into the SNP's finances rumbles on, it has now emerged that the National Crime Agency, which has been dubbed Britain's FBI, are assisting the investigation. Detectives working on the case called on the body to conduct an independent review of its work several months before Scheming Sturgeon's home was raided and her husband, former SNP Chief Executive Peter Murrell, arrested. Despite the party lurching from scandal to scandal, the new First Minister said this week he's confident of both winning the general election in Scotland and a second independence referendum. However, last month, the Scottish Conservatives deputy leader and rising star in politics, Megan Gallagher, expertly dispatched Humza useless during one of his first appearances in Holyrood.
The SNP is in total meltdown. Humza Yousaf is so indebted to his former mentors that he will not do the right thing and suspend them while the investigation is ongoing. It is past time that Humza Yousaf tackled this scandal head-on and proved to the Scottish public that he is his own man, instead of defending and deflecting from his predecessor's tarnished legacy.
Now, bun-swallowing speeches like that have established Meghan as one of the most famous Scottish Tories since Ruth Davidson, and at just 31 years old, she may well become the new saviour of the Conservatives in Scotland. And unlike Sturgeon, Meghan uses politics to advocate for women's rights, breaking her maternity leave recently to vote against the ex-First Minister's sick gender reform bill. And I'm delighted that Megan Gallagher joins us now. So, Megan, look, you are putting a spotlight on the SNP, which is so important because it feels like for so long the media and the establishment in Scotland has allowed them to get away with so much. And I'm not talking about the police probe, actually. I'm talking about the way that they have destroyed the nation.
Well, good afternoon. Good evening, Dan, and thank you very much for having me on this evening. I think you're absolutely right. The SNP has managed to, I would say, hide some of their greatest failings of their time in government here in Scotland. But I think recently, more so than ever, we have seen a deeply divided party who can't even agree on party policy. I think it started with the gender recognition reform, but we're now seeing it over different policies such as the deposit return scheme and also highly protected marine areas. So all's not good in the SNP camp, and that certainly gives opportunities for us, the Scottish Conservatives, as the official opposition, to make inroads in Scotland and to actually come up with good policies that the people of Scotland want to prioritise.
Now, before we learned all of the details about the police probe, it's easy to forget that Sturgeon was caught up in this whole issue of the gender recognition reform bill and the fact that she and her government had decided to send this rapist, Adam Graham, to a women's prison. So this is when it all started to fall apart, I think, for Sturgeon. Have a watch.
Trans women are women, but in the prison context, there is no automatic right for a trans woman.
So there are contexts where a trans woman is not a woman?
No, there is. My comments about her, the person being a rapist is in context of what should happen to them within the prison service.
I think you just referred to Ira Bryson using the word her. Does that mean you do, in fact, think she is a woman?
Anything into... I am trying to rationally...
individual,
Look,
but you started saying her. Do you regard Isla Bryson as a woman?
She regards herself as a woman. I regard the individual as a rapist.
It's unbelievable. And Megan, your approach could not have been more contrasting. Tell me about the decision you made, because you were on maternity leave, in the middle of your maternity leave, but you felt so passionately about this policy that you cut it short in order to vote against Sturgeon's plans.
So it was a really difficult decision for me to make, because when you are on maternity leave, that's your bonding time with you and your baby. And before I went off on maternity leave, I was the party spokesperson for the legislation that was coming through. So I did feel conflicted, because you started that journey and I was quite determined to see it through. But with the timings, it just didn't work out with my maternity leave as it was. And when Rachel Hamilton took over, she did an absolutely sterling job making sure that there was effective opposition to the bill that would put women and girls' rights at risk. So I did choose in the end to break maternity leave to vote on the legislation. I have absolutely
Oh no, we've just lost Megan Gallagher. Hopefully we'll get her back, because it was such an important moment, I think, when Megan cut her maternity leave off and actually said to Scheming Sturgeon, this matters. Just while we're getting Megan back, I will offer a quick but important legal note. The allegations surrounding the SNP's finances are denied by all parties involved. The police investigation is ongoing and no charges have been brought against anyone. We can return to Megan Gallagher now. Sorry, Megan, we lost you there for a second. I want to move on to Humza, the new First Minister. Now, I know you're far too professional and far too polite, but I call the bloke Humza useless. Because the problem is, Megan, before he was First Minister, he managed to destroy every portfolio area he was in, from transport to health. And now this guy is in charge of Scotland. I mean, can you believe that he's ended up in this crucially important job?
I mean, I don't think you need any opposition member to be scathing about Humza Yousaf's record. I mean, all you had to look was at his competitor at the time, Kate Forbes, who said, you know, when Humza Yousaf was the transport minister, the trains never ran on time. So that kind of sums up the record of Humza Yousaf's time as a government minister. We used to say that the SNP was incompetent, but now under Humza Yousaf, we now say that the SNP is incapable. And it's, you know, it really is beggars belief, the amount of U-turns and the amount of announcements that the new First Minister has made. That actually goes against the grain of what the Scottish public are thinking at this point in time. We need a government that actually focuses on the people's priorities, and we're not seeing that from Humza Yousaf or the SNP.
No. So he is useless, right?
Well, as you said, I'm too polite and too professional to comment on that, but I wouldn't say that his record is anything to be proud about.
Exactly. A useless record, I think we can say that. What is going to be Scheming Sturgeon's legacy?
Well, I would say for Nicola Sturgeon, her legacy would be her failings over to stand up for the rights of women and girls. You know, I think we saw that with her inability to stand up for what was right over the gender recognition reform legislation, certainly the unintended consequences that could come from that bill. I think that will be Nicola Sturgeon's legacy, and also failing to secure another independence referendum for her party, which, of course, I'm pleased about.
Now, finally, Megan, can we just talk about you briefly? Because you're only 31, new mum, but after the way that you took Humza to task, there's a lot of hype around you and your future. I mean, could you see yourself following in Ruth Davidson's footsteps and one day becoming leader of the Scottish Conservatives?
Well, I've always been a huge fan of Ruth, and it was actually Ruth who was one of many who convinced me to keep going, keep standing for election. And of course, it has paid off. I've had, you know, a really good opportunity so far, being a councillor for the area that I call home, then becoming an MSP and, of course, deputy leader of the Scottish Conservatives. I take that role exceptionally seriously. I'm absolutely delighted to be able to deputise for Douglas Ross. And, you know, that's where I see my priorities just now. You know, I wouldn't say that I'm a leader in waiting. I think I'm a deputy leader in action.
Excellent. I like to hear it, because you've got a big job ahead of the next election. Megan Gallagher, Deputy Leader of the Scottish Conservatives, thank you so much. But coming up, as Bud Light suffers a dramatic drop in sales after pairing up with the trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney, is Jim Davidson boycotting the woke bear brand? The legendary comic makes a sensational return to Uncancelled live in the studio. You're not going to want to miss it. But next in the media buzz, as his battle with the British press rages on, is it healthy for the Duke of Sussex to continue waging war over here, despite claiming he wants to start a peaceful new life in California, even though the rest of the royal family are settling out of court? My Superstar panel return to debate that, plus more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages in just a moment.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We're going to bring you a beautiful moment with Prince William and a 93-year-old royal fan in just a moment. But first, let's return to tomorrow's news tonight in our mini buzz, and more front pages have just been delivered. The Daily Telegraph leads with the woke Whitehall blob's opposition to the repeal of Brexit laws, with less than half of the almost 5,000 EU laws now due to be scrapped by Sunak now off. The Times reports that the NHS plans to send thousands of hospital doctors without the highest level of training into GP surgeries to reduce waiting times and free up appointments. But I'm really interested in the story in The Sun. You know that I've been talking to you for quite a while about Philip Schofield, and a lot is going down between Philip Schofield and ITV. And this story is something that I have heard for some time, and I think it's really significant. Holly Willoughby and Philip Schofield are barely speaking off camera at ITV's this morning. This is according to The Sun's brilliant showbiz reporter Ellie Henman, who's very well connected. Her sources say that their 14-year relationship has, quote, cooled, with Holly apparently prepared to present the show solo if Phil ends up leaving. And, you know, this is very sensible of Holly because there's a lot going down with Philip. I said the other day, the most loathsome man on television, and she would be much better to protect her own career and her own future and host the show with Alison Hammond and disassociate herself from Schofield. And it seems like that's what she's planning to do, so I'm sure we'll be discussing that over the next few days too. But more on the media buzz now with tonight's superstar panel. The political commentator Dominique Samuels, the businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the former Labour Party advisor Matthew Lazar. I can assure you we are all talking off camera, aren't we, guys?
Yes, we are.
Now, Prince Harry's latest legal wrangle with the media today sparked an admission from the publisher of the Daily Mirror that it unlawfully gathered information on the Duke of Sussex in 2004. Mirror Group newspapers apologised for sending a private investigator to London's China White nightclub on one instance 19 years ago, but strictly denied any involvement in phone hacking. Harry claims others, including Kate Middleton, Prince Charles and his ex-girlfriend Chelsea Davy, were also targeted on their mobile phones. He told the High Court in a statement that Davy eventually told him a royal life was not for her as a result. Harry's case is one of 4 major litigations against UK tabloid newspapers, with the Duke refusing to settle out of court like other celebrities and instead choosing to personally give evidence next month. What's now clear is that his hatred of the press has become a personal vendetta that's ultimately going to end up destroying his life. When he quit Britain for the US 3 years ago, Harry insisted he'd be looking forward to a life of service and happiness, but he's done nothing but look back in anger at his family and country, refusing to let the rage inside him subside. So, Adam Brooks, let me tell you, as someone who has gone through some of these high-profile court battles, media court battles, that drag on for months and months and months, you'd have to be really deeply unhappy to put your hand up and say, I want to fight 4 of these things. So what's going on with Harry here? And can you understand at all why he seems to be absolutely determined to destroy the British media?
No newspaper or media organisation should have the power to tap your phone.
Absolutely
or
not.
Go so
couldn't agree more.
Deeply into your private life where, you know...
Totally wrong.
It's completely wrong.
But we all know that, and the Mirror has apologised for that, and...
But it doesn't erase that.
No.
I mean, for once, I do not like Harry. You know, I've never pretended to like him. Do not like him, but I make him right. If I was him, I would be going for the jugular on this to stop it happening again. I feel like it's such an intrusion.
But it has stopped.
It has stopped.
It's not really.
But this is the line.
Illegal activity has stopped.
Yeah, but this will put a line under it, I think, if they are hit really badly financially. I know they settle out of court with William and that, but I think this really does need to be a case where, bang, they're found guilty or judged against and they are fined heavily to stop it happening again.
This has been going on for years, Matthew Latzer. It has been going on for years. Let me tell you, as someone who has worked on Fleet Street and gave evidence at the Davidson inquiry to make it absolutely clear that I was never involved in any illegal practices, I absolutely deplore everything that went on. But it stopped years and years and years ago. For most people, this is a money-making scheme. This has become a moral crusade for Harry, and in my belief, it's nothing to do with stopping illegal activity, which has already stopped. He wants to stop the British press from being able to report accurately on his life. He actually wants to crack down on freedom of the press, and it's terrifying.
I mean, I think that's a really good point there, because scores of people settled, you know, and it was, as we've all agree, it was absolutely deplorable what went on and the excesses that went on. But most people have settled, and there does seem to be a vendetta. I find frightening some of the comments that come out of Team Harry and around them, which is literally, you know, it's our way or no way. And so, yes, I think there is... I think it is a sort of very unhinged, almost, obsession with the press, which I don't think is healthy for him. No. I mean, as a person, it's not good for him. He needs to... He's clearly got very serious issues that he's continuing to address. That's what we believe he spends most of his time doing, is trying to find his centre of himself, as Angela was saying earlier. So I think, therefore, you know, he needs to concentrate on that, and appearing, as you say, endlessly. I mean, he's got to, you know, the one thing he does in Britain is appear in court, either in person or with his lawyers, which is very, very peculiar.
Which is so stressful. I mean, the thing is, Dominique, right, you have to be quite... Look, what am I trying to say here? Harry wants to make us all feel sorry for him. He has had the most privileged life in so many ways. He also always wants to blame someone else for all of his issues. And I feel like now he can't take responsibility for anything, so he wants to blame his family and blame the media.
I mean, that could be true. I don't agree with everything Harry's done. I mean, I've been quite a vocal critic of both Harry and Meghan for quite a while now. However, to be honest, you know, there's been certain points where I have understood where he's coming from with regards to the way the media reports on certain things. So, for example, with regards to Meghan being at the Coronation, you know, the press didn't want Meghan at the coronation anyway, made that quite clear with the stories that were put out. But then when she said that she wasn't coming to the coronation, there were stories being put out that she was abandoning Harry and that she was a bad wife. I mean...
Yeah, but people are allowed to have that opinion, though, aren't
you
they?
can have that opinion, but how
do
you expect him not to have this vendetta when the media keep saying nasty things
Well, I'll
about
tell you how I expect him not to have this vendetta. If he's so worried about protecting his privacy and protecting the privacy of his family, then why on earth has he just written a book which includes details of his brother's private parts and private conversations that he had with his own father at his father's funeral? I just think the guy is utterly hypocritical.
I agree with you, Dan.
That's obviously wrong.
He invades his own privacy and his family's privacy.
Saying those things was so wrong, especially about William's manhood and the conversations with his father.
Very discreetly.
He has shown himself to be a hypocrite. But what I do honestly feel that a line needs to be drawn under this phone
But the thing is, but it has been drawn. That's the point. There were criminal cases years ago. People went to jail. The reality is, the phone hacking has stopped. It stopped long ago because no journalist would risk going to jail. And if they did, they would be caught. So this is a personal vendetta. I think it's hugely, hugely hypocritical. And by the way, I will repeat again, I'm not excusing any of the illegal behaviour that went on in Fleet Street. It was completely despicable. But I think there's a really fine line between using that and then starting to crack down on the right of journalists to break stories that are legitimately in the public interest. For example, like the Mail on Sunday recently when it came to his security and his battle with the Home Office, which he wanted to shut down, and I think it's really wrong. But look, while miserable Prince Harry is having a ruck with anyone he can get his hands on, his level-headed brother William is doing what he should be doing, serving his country with pride. And this is the moment the Prince of Wales met a royal superfan who had been, I can't believe this, it's amazing, to no less than 3 coronations in her lifetime.
3 coronations? Yeah. Is it only 3 coronations?
Yes. I'm 93 now.
Goodness me, 3 coronations, that's amazing.
Your grandmother, I slept on the pavement for 3 nights, and it poured as rain. It was wonderful. And then it was George, wasn't it? I had measles.
But did you still go?
Oh, yes, yes.
It's amazing. I can't believe it. There can't be many people like you.
No.
Incredible.
But this is marvellous.
It's very nice to meet you.
No, it's just adorable. I mean, I think Harry could learn a thing or two about loyalty from sweet Elizabeth there. Matthew Larser, Adam Brooks, Dominic Samuels, do stand by because coming up, as ITV's coronation coverage shocks viewers with race-baiting comments like the royal balcony being terribly white, should the broadcasters' divisive pundits like Dr. Scholler be given airtime? My Superstar panel will return to thrash that one out as we reveal tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But next, as Bud Light sales fall a mammoth 21.4% after endorsing trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney, has the company gone woke and now potentially gone broke? Comedy legend Jim Davidson fully uncancelled on that. Oh, and Prince Harry's coronation flop. Jim Davidson live, anything could happen, so you're not going to want to miss it. We're back in just 2 minutes' time.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Comedy legend Jim Davidson live with me in the studio tonight. He's very naughty. Now, it appears that not all national treasures were taken in by the King's coronation, as Fawlty Towers star John Cleese gave GB News' very own Andrew Doyle his hilarious take on the day. Watch this.
Hey, Dan, and I sort of looked at the screen and I lost it.
As in?
I laughed. I couldn't stop laughing. This is absolutely...
So what did you find funny about it?
Well, I just looked at it, all these people in these silly costumes and all taking everything so seriously. I thought it's a Python sketch.
So from one national treasure, comedy legend, to another, Jim Davidson, your response?
Well, how wonderful to see a great comedian on GB News.
Yes!
And he's got John Cleese with him.
Stop.
No, seriously, John, get a grip. I mean, if you look at Monty Python, I was working with a comedian the other day and he said, all those middle-class people all getting together trying to work out that they're university funny, you know, and, well, I thought the coronation was fantastic. Yeah. I thought it was just... I just thought the whole thing was brilliant and showed up. And I went to the funny concert.
The one at Windsor?
Yeah.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah. Well, you could have come, because I've been dumped. I had a spare seat.
Thank you for the invite, Jim. I would have been there in a flash. I would have been your hot date. People would have started rumours, Jim.
Ladies and gentlemen, swipe me to the left. No, it was fantastic.
Was it great?
It was great. And there was a bit where everyone stood up when Lionel Richie sang All Night Long. And from the roll box, up a millisecond later, who didn't want to stand up and dance was the King. Ding! Up he come with his little flag. And the Queen said, there's Jim Davidson there. And I looked at the King and I went, what are you doing? And he looked at me and pointed, and we both made eyes, you know, like girls do on a dance floor, and we were dancing with one another. It was the greatest moment. If my mother could have been there.
She would have been
it was
proud.
great. I thought the whole thing took my breath away. It took my breath away. And we can do things great. Not only can we do pageantry, we can party.
And we should be proud, shouldn't we?
We should be proud.
I had to ask you about Princess Anne's choice of hat, because was it purposeful? Because it completely blocked out Prince Harry from view, Jim.
Have we got a picture of it?
Yes, there
it is. Look.
Goodness me.
And it sort of matches his hair.
Yeah.
You never wear red when you're ginger, do you? So I think she blocked him out. What do you think about Harry? I think he walked in looking slightly embarrassed.
Yeah.
Was he ashamed of himself, or was he thinking, I don't want to be here? Was he throwing Teddy out the pram?
Well, I got the sense that in the Abbey, there was a real cold air towards him at this moment when he walked in.
But nobody booed. They said they'd boo him.
Yeah, there was no boos inside the Abbey. Maybe that would have been different if he'd bought Meghan.
Maybe it would have been different. And there was that woman called Ogiolib.
Oh, what did you make of that?
She was from Brigadoon, wasn't she? That Scottish film of an island that turns up every now and then. She said they looked terribly white. Yeah. I think that's inflammatory. Yeah. But they do look terribly white.
Yeah.
I saw the Nigerian royal family once. They looked They look very black.
Yeah.
Beautifully black. Yeah,
It was the use of the word terribly for me.
Was it?
Yeah, because what's that about? What's terribly white?
Terribly doesn't mean terrible, though.
No, well, to me, I
you can if you don't like her.
At the end of the day,
like her.
people on the other side of the argument throw racism claims around all the time.
Yeah.
So if they're going to do that, then you have to be consistent with it.
Yeah.
And a lot of ethnic minority folk who we've had on the show actually agree.
Do you know that she played in an all-women of colour production? She played Edward II or something.
Yeah.
What's going on in the world?
Goes
I'm going to play Nelson Mandela in the next film.
But you know what? There is hope.
That's where one.
There is hope because Bud Light sales have plummeted faster than you can say Dylan Mulvaney. This is absolutely bizarre. Well, that's not bizarre, actually. I think it's something to celebrate. In the months since the beer giant launched that disastrous and very bizarre campaign, their sales have dropped 21.4%. And it's also the other brands connected to it. Budweiser itself, suffering an 11.5% fall. So do you think, finally, Jim, these businesses might wake up to the idea of go woke, go broke?
I think they should do. Anyway, Bud tastes like... I'm not a great fan of Bud beer. Foreign beer. I don't like foreign beer.
Really?
I'm English. I like Carlsberg.
I like Bud.
Do you like Bud? Really?
But I'm boycotting it now.
Are you boycotting it? Why? Because that young person that young person as well was advertising sports bras, but had no breasts.
Yeah.
So there's hope for me advertising underpants.
Oh, God, we're not even going to go into that. We're not going to delve into that, Jim.
Noddy's got his hat on, chaps.
No, but I'll tell you why, for me, I'm boycotting it. It's not actually because of Dylan Mulvaney. I mean, it's not Dylan Mulvaney's fault that they got the job. It's because of the arrogance of a company saying, we don't give a damn about the people who've bought us for years and years and years. We just want to appeal to these horrible wokesters at
Where's it
universities.
going to end? Who says enough is enough? People power doesn't seem to be enough.
Yeah.
It's
But that's why I
GB
wish
News
people would...
and you... People like me...
On Ustream?
On Ustream. We're waving the flag, but no one seems to listen.
Well, I just wish folk would turn off ITV now. Actually, I genuinely mean that. It's like, this is a company that isn't about freedom of speech. No, it's not. That is race-baiting. And I actually think, use your remote. You know, just use your remote. If you're annoyed about this, stop watching and come over to GB News. But look, Jim, America's favourite Hollywood actor, Tom Hanks...
What's he done now?
I'm happy with him. I'm really happy with it.
What's he done?
He has said that he will boycott these books that have been rewritten for modern sensitivities. So, you know, they did it for Roald Dahl, who's one of my favourite authors the other day. They updated his books. And the Forrest Gump star has basically said, no. I'm only reading the books if they're the originals.
Well, good
He's
for him.
right, isn't he?
Yeah, well, I think people changing it. I watched the Dam Busters the other day, and they changed the name of Guy Gibson's dog. Now, I know it could be deemed as offensive by some, but you can't change history. Now, I haven't read a great... The last book I read was Janet and John, Book 2. And I think I was about 7. Now, they might change that now.
That was the last book?
Yeah, I don't read a lot of books. I don't know. I don't string words together. No, I read a lot of books. I'm just trying to be facetious. You can't alter books. Why should you need to alter books? Do you remember back in 1938 when Hitler burnt all those books? I mean, what is going on? What is going on?
Indeed, because actually...
He must have thought he was doing the world a favour as well, like these loonies.
Yeah, indeed. And actually... you shouldn't even burn Hitler's book because it's important for history to be able to understand.
I've never read any of his books.
No,
I thought he was a terrible...
He
was a good painter, apparently.
He was a very
One
terrible
apartment,
man.
2 coats.
Now, look, Jim, Robert De Niro has become a father again.
Good for him.
At the age of 79.
Good old Bob.
So this is his 7th child.
Well done, Bob.
He said it was planned and came as no surprise. Do you think 79 is too old to become a father, Jim?
I think it's too old to attempt to have a child. Seriously.
Never too old to attempt that.
Listen, mate, I'm 70 this year. Nothing down there works at all.
Well, I don't believe
I'm actually becoming transsexual because I'm growing boobs and this is now countersunk. Obviously, I don't look at my... Did you see that film E.T. when he was lying in the water? Yes. Like that? That's me in the bath now. I have to turn the light out. But I'm thinking Bob De Niro... Bob's a great actor.
Yeah, very
Bob.
good.
I call him Bob.
Very good. You're tight.
Yeah, we're like that. That's me there. And I think, I don't know how he did it. He must have took a 20-year-old to bed with a set of jump leads.
Oh, God. Jim Davidson, on that note, please stop.
Don't invite me again.
Really
the ratings have just gone like that.
And it is time now to reveal tonight's greatest Britain and Union jackass. Oh, Dominic Samuels, save us with your GB nominee, please.
Well, I'm not sure you'd agree, but mine is the Tory MPs that came out and condemned the arrest of some Coronation protesters. I think it's an example of how dangerous it is to allocate some protests good and some
No, I do
bad.
agree. I agree, as long as they were talking about the protests, not the eco-terrorists, not the folk committing criminal damage. That's where I think there's a difference. When it comes to the protesters, absolutely, and I think that involves Graham Smith, the bloke from Republic, actually. Adam Brooks, your
My nominee is honorary, and it's the Beer Drinkers of America for shunning Bud Light.
Oh, yes, as we were just discussing,
and
yeah.
causing the sales to drop by around 25%. Go woke, go broke.
And Matthew Larser, your nominee?
Mine are the anti-Tory majority in Britain who worked out last week the best way of getting change in this country.
Otherwise known as the Coalition from Hell. Oh, but look, I'm going to go with Adam Brooks and the Bud boycotters, because that just means I've won, because I'm one of them. Dominic Samuels, your Union jackass nominee, please.
So mine is Oxford Union this is providing, quote, welfare resources to students that can't handle a difference of opinion from people like Kathleen Stock, who are feminist gender-critical campaigners, think it's ridiculous, and an example of how overly sensitive a lot of students have become.
Yeah, you're meant to be at university to hear opposing views, right? Some of them are tough. I mean, it's ludicrous.
It's not even tough what she's saying, it's just common sense.
Well, what she's saying is biology, you know, but there you go. Adam Brooks, your nominee?
My nominee is Dr. Shola for her race baiting on TV, which I think is divisive and inflammatory. And also, I think she was quite rude to our good friend Dawn Neeson this morning as well.
She was awful to Dawn Neeson. I'm not going to play that clip, but I am going to play an example of her race baiting.
Listen, slimming down the monarchy as a sign of modernity is an insult to our intelligence, OK? Not only is this pale, stale, and predominantly male, right? It sends a powerful message of maintaining the hierarchical divide of class, race, wealth, and privilege.
But I mean, that's just the start of what she goes down. She was vile to Dawn Neeson, and a lovely woman. Matthew Larser, your nominee?
Mine's the Metropolitan Police, because not only, as Dominique was saying, with Saturday hardly their finest hour, but today, in a very notorious case, which they had to apologise for from the 80s, of a murder of a private investigator, they found crucial documents in a filing cabinet. There's something very wrong there.
Well, look, I'm going to go with Dominic Samuels on this and the Oxford Union, who are treating students like children, the true definition of snowflakery. So Dominic Samuels, Adam Brooks, Matthew Larser, thank you so much to my superstar panel.
You won't.
I'm back again tomorrow night from 9 p.m. with Lady Colin Campbell and friends. But next up, it's the brilliant Headliners gang. Good night.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.